Trinity, the morning humanity changed forever. The desert before the fire. In the early hours of July 16, 1945, the desert of southern New Mexico was unnaturally still. The Jornada del Muerto, the journey of the dead man, a name given centuries earlier by Spanish explorers who found the land so empty, so unforgiving, that survival itself felt uncertain. That morning, it felt even more desolate. No cities, no crowds, no headlines, just a steel tower rising 100 feet above the sand, holding a device no human being had ever seen detonated before. They called it the Gadget, a small name, almost playful, for something designed to unleash the energy locked inside the nucleus of a plutonium atom. Above, storm clouds drifted slowly across the dark sky. Below, cables stretched for miles across the desert floor, connecting sensors, cameras, and recording instruments. Everything was ready, except certainty. The race that changed everything. The Trinity Test was not born from ambition. It was born from fear. In 1939, physicists warned that Nazi Germany might be attempting to develop an atomic weapon. If Hitler acquired such a bomb first, the consequences would be unthinkable. That fear triggered the Manhattan Project, a secret operation so massive it employed over 130,000 people. Entire towns were constructed in isolation. Scientists worked behind fences and armed guards. Mail was censored. Conversations were monitored. At the center of the scientific effort stood J. Robert Oppenheimer. Brilliant, complex, intensely driven. He gathered some of the greatest minds of the 20th century in Los Alamos, New Mexico, asking them to solve a problem no one had ever solved before: how to turn theory into detonation. By early 1945, Germany had surrendered. The original enemy was gone. But the bomb was nearly complete, and once knowledge reaches a certain point, it rarely retreats. The device. The bomb being tested at Trinity was an implosion-type plutonium weapon. Unlike the simpler uranium design that would later be used on Hiroshima, this device required extraordinary precision. Conventional explosives had to detonate simultaneously around a plutonium core, compressing it inward with perfect symmetry. Microseconds mattered. A slight miscalculation could cause a fizzle, or nothing at all. Theoretical calculations predicted success, but theory had never carried consequences like this. There was even a quiet concern discussed among a few physicists. What if the explosion ignited the atmosphere? What if the intense heat triggered a runaway fusion reaction in atmospheric nitrogen? The odds were considered extremely low, but not zero. And at 5:29 a.m., they were about to test more than a bomb. They were testing the limits of human understanding. Waiting for dawn, thunderstorms rolled across the desert the night before. Lightning flashed along the horizon. Rain delayed the test. Inside bunkers more than 10,000 yards away, observers prepared themselves. Some lay face down in the sand. Some wore welding goggles. Others turned their backs to the tower, instructed not to look directly at the flash. Nervous humor circulated to mask anxiety. There were betting pools estimating the explosive yield. 5 kilotons? 10? 20? Would it even work? General Leslie Groves projected confidence, but even he felt the weight of uncertainty. Oppenheimer stood apart from the others, thin, sleep-deprived, quiet. For years, he had carried the intellectual burden of this project. He had argued for speed. He had pressed for precision. He had insisted it must be done before the enemy could do it first. Now the enemy was defeated, and yet the device remained. At 5:10 a.m., the storm began to clear. The sky opened slowly. A pale line of light appeared at the horizon. The order was given. Proceed. The countdown. At 5:29 and 45 seconds, the final countdown began. 10. The desert held its breath. 9. Men pressed themselves into the earth. 8. No one spoke. 7. The tower stood alone against the dim horizon. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. The birth of a man-made sun, for the smallest fraction of time. Nothing. Then the night disappeared. A flash erupted across the desert with a brightness that defied comprehension. It was not like lightning. It was not like fire. It was as if the sky itself had cracked open. The light did not illuminate the desert. It overwhelmed it. Observers miles away felt heat on their skin. Even through protective lenses, even with eyes closed, the brilliance penetrated their vision. Some later said they could see their own bones outlined inside their hands. For a moment, there were no shadows, because the light came from everywhere. And in that light, Oppenheimer did not look away. He watched, not like a scientist observing data, not like a commander celebrating success. He watched like a man confronting the physical manifestation of his own will. The fireball rose, slow at first, then expanding rapidly, devouring the steel tower that had held it. Metal vaporized, sand beneath it liquefied instantly into green radioactive glass. The air trembled. The shock wave had not yet arrived. And that silence, that terrible silence, lasted long enough for comprehension to begin. For years, Oppenheimer had lived inside equations, neutron cross-sections, critical mass calculations, implosion symmetry. He had believed this was necessary. He had believed it would prevent something worse. But what rose before him now was no equation. It was a sun, born from human hands. The mushroom cloud began to form, folding upward in boiling layers of orange, red, and black. Magnificent, terrifying, inevitable. And then the sound came. A deep, concussive roar tore across the desert, striking the observers with physical force. The ground shook. Windows shattered miles away. The shock wave hit like a wall of compressed air. But Oppenheimer remained still. In that rising column of fire, he saw something others were not yet ready to see. This was not just victory. It was transformation. Germany had already fallen, which meant this detonation was no longer about preventing catastrophe. It was about introducing a new one. He later recalled a line from the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." But those words were not spoken aloud in triumph. They were internal, a recognition, because in that moment, he understood something irreversible had happened. Humanity had crossed a boundary. War no longer had a ceiling. From this morning forward, global conflict carried the possibility of extinction, not metaphorical extinction, literal extinction. Nations would learn, they would replicate, they would stockpile. Peace would no longer mean safety, it would mean deterrence. And deterrence depends on restraint, and restraint is fragile. As the mushroom cloud climbed over 40,000 feet into the sky, Oppenheimer stood beneath the fading glow of a man-made star. He had unlocked the energy of the universe, but he had also unlocked a permanent shadow. And he knew, even before Hiroshima, even before Nagasaki, even before the Cold War, the world would never feel the same again. The beginning of the nuclear age. The Trinity Test lasted seconds. Its consequences will last as long as nuclear weapons exist. The official yield was around 20 kilotons of TNT, stronger than most expected, proof that the design worked. Within weeks, 2 bombs would fall on Japan. The war would end. But something else had begun, an era defined not by conventional armies, but by the fear of total annihilation. The war ended. The fear never did, because once humanity proved it could build a sun, it could never again forget that it holds the power to destroy itself in a single morning. And somewhere in the silence that followed that desert sunrise, the nuclear age began. And with it, a permanent, invisible tension that still shapes our world today. Deseja que eu agora crie um prompt para cada uma dessas sessões, seguindo o formato que usamos nas séries anteriores. Uma cena única, cinematográfica, estilo vintage 1940.